The 2025 NFL Draft is officially in the books for the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about every pick they made, what the roster looks like, and what's the biggest weakness for this team now that the draft is over. We'll talk about all that right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome inside a late night edition here of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvogu, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. You've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore, Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give them a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. The 2025 draft was quite interesting for the Saints. Got themselves a potential franchise left tackle, maybe fix their quarterback problem, but definitely aggravated the fan base in the process, added a lot of hard-hitting talent to their defense, and then addressed their skill position needs with some late-round picks that we could get into. So if you guys have any comments, thoughts, predictions, declarations that you got to get out about this draft class, put them in the chat as always, and I'll make sure to get through every comment here as we get started on this late night edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. Before you guys put any comments, just want to remind you, if you do enjoy the content that we do here, please like the video. It really greatly helps out the channel, and we obviously appreciate it here at Boo Crew Media. So without further ado, let's jump into things. You guys get your comments in the chat, and we'll go through them. Let's talk about the picks that I personally really loved, right? You know, I think that it was definitely a polarizing draft for the Saints. You're going through their class. You got Kelvin Banks as your first pick, Tyler Shough as your second, Vernon Broughton as your third, Jonas Sanker as your fourth pick. Then into day three, you add Danny Stutsman from Oklahoma, Quincy Riley from Louisville, Devin Neal from Kansas. You also add Diggs from Syracuse and Moliki Matavao from UCLA. So Saints got pretty busy on day three. They didn't make any trades at all in this draft, which I thought was quite interesting. Mickey Loomis actually admit today that there are moments where he thought the Saints were going to draft a wide receiver, and one was slotted ahead of them at some point. So, I wonder if Ted McMillan actually was one of those targets because he was drafted a pick ahead of them. So anyway, let's get into picks that I really liked for this team. The first one is kind of a no-brainer, but I really liked the Kelvin Banks pick. I know that Kelvin Banks is not the sexy pick because it's offensive tackle again. And I'll be the first one to say I'm tired of the Saints drafting offensive linemen. It's not exciting. It's not what us fans want, right? You want that flashy pick. You want an Ashton Genty, a Tet McMillan, a Tyler Warren, a Colston Loveland, like whatever it might be. You want one of those flashy picks. Saints obviously didn't make it. But I think Kelvin Banks is a very, very clean prospect. Only 21 years old, which is incredible. Only gave a one sack last year, has 40-plus starts at Texas under his belt, has gone up against really, really, good competition in the SEC, and also prior to that when Texas was in the Big 12. So I really like the Kelvin Banks pick. I know, again, this is not the pick that Saints fans are clamoring for at number 9, but I do believe he's going to be a really good player. And again, I love the idea, if you nail this pick and him and Fuaga are your bookend tackles, that's your identity for this offense. Everything runs through having a really good O-line. That said, for people frustrated with this pick, I'll be the first one to say, I agree with you guys on the frustration because the process is broken, right? You whiffed on the Trevor Penning pick, which led you to making this one. So I get why that was frustrating. The second pick that I really, really liked, I loved the Jonas Sanker pick. He's one of those guys, the more you watch him, the more you really like him. And I wonder if the Saints got their Von Bell 2.0 out of Sanker. I really do. I think he's a really nice talent. He is the type of player that when you put on his tape, it seems like he's always cleaning up someone else's mess. And, in the NFL, hopefully that's not the case. Virginia, maybe the talent level's not as high. NFL, he is a thumper. He's going to be surrounded by a better cast. I think that when you look at Brandon Staley's history, he is very big on getting the best out of those type of versatile DBs. Now, granted, he's worked with Ramsey when he was on the LA Rams and then with Derwin James on the Chargers. And I don't know if Sanker will become that, but I really do look at Jonas Sanker's tape. I love the physicality he plays with. I think he has good range. He's more than willing to get into the box. He attacks downhill. So I really, really liked that pick for the New Orleans Saints. That was the second one for me where, the more I watch, the more I'm like, man, really loving that pick. The third one for me is Danny Stutsman. I mean, he's a tackling machine, another player that's going to go downhill, be really good for this team in that regard. And I think linebacker was a sneaky need for the Saints. I love Demario Davis. I'd love for Demario Davis to play 50 freaking years, but that's not how it works. And you're starting to finally see a little bit of a decline because Father Time is undefeated. He catches up to all of us. And I think for New Orleans to get another linebacker in there, I love the pick. 3-year starter at Oklahoma, super, super, effective. And, I think he's one of those guys that, who knows, the Saints in a couple years' time might be like, hey, he's going to be one of your starting linebackers for a long time. So I like the Danny Stutsman pick. The last pick that I'm going to say that I liked, and I don't know if he's got a high ceiling, and personally, I don't think he has a high ceiling, but I just like the idea of addressing this position and getting a player who's really, really productive, is Devin Neal. Devin Neal, really twitchy guy. I don't think he has great burst, and yet he's super elusive, which you almost don't think those go kind of hand in hand, right? Like, if you're an elusive guy, you usually have that speed. Devin Neal, you don't see that speed on tape, but man, he'll make you miss in a phone booth, and I love that about him. So the picks that I really, really liked, I loved the Kelvin Banks. I don't love the idea of taking offensive tackle. I love the player, though. Really, really like Jonas Sanker. I really like Devin Neal. And as I mentioned before, Stutsman, I think he's a very good player as well for the Saints. So before I get into Tyler Shough, which is the most controversial pick the Saints have made, and it's not even close, let's get into some comments that you guys have. I don't want to leave you guys hanging until our fan Q&A, so I'll try to break it up a little bit, and then we'll get into the fan Q&A in a little. So DJ Drama Gaming with the super chat, thank you for the support, says Saints overall draft grade on CBS is a C, 30th out of 32nd. Mickey sucks. I want him not handling drafting. In my opinion, Moore had no say. Louisville quarterback is awful. Here's the thing. I'm totally okay with Saints fans being frustrated and being really frustrated at Mickey Loomis. Totally get that. I'm not going to knock you guys for that. You know where I stand on that. I am not a Mickey Loomis fan. That said, the Tyler Shough pick, I think that pick was made because that's who Kellen Moore liked. I know Kellen Moore in the Saints front office loved Cam Ward. They tried to trade up for the number 1 pick because they liked him that much. Price was steep. Titans also weren't willing to trade it. So you move off of that. The Saints had Tyler Shough graded as their second quarterback. Whether or not that's right, only time will tell. And whether or not people agree with it, that's up to you. Most people don't agree with it, obviously. But that pick was a Kellen Moore pick. That's all I'm going to say about that one. I get the frustration. I can see why the Saints got such a low grade, though, because in reality, they're trying to clean up messes without fixing a lot of other problems, right? Like, you're trying to clean up your offensive tackle mess. You still got a mess at guard. You're trying to clean up your quarterback problem. You still got problems at wide receiver and tight end. You're trying to clean up your secondary problem. You're still not great at pass rusher. So, I get why they got that type of grade, but, those grades to me, like, no one knows. We're all kind of guessing in a vacuum if these players are going to pan out. Another super chat here from DJ Trauma Gaming. Thank you so much for the support. You've been fantastic just all the time, not even just today, but no splash picks, need a Reggie, need that hype. I understand that. And to be honest, I do think that is one thing I hate about this Saints team is like, who's like the juice on this team? Who's the guy that when you need an impact play, you go to and you think he's going to be outstanding? I don't know if the Saints have one of those guys. To be honest, I don't believe they have one of those guys right now. And that's a little bit, upsetting. A little bit upsetting, in my opinion. So going to get into a couple more comments, and then we'll get back into our other topics, and then we'll go right back to you guys. We'll kind of go back and forth here. Jerry G saying, I'm here. What's going on, Jerry? Ain't no stopping Jerry, clearly. Joe B. and Ensign, what's good, brother? What's going on, Joe? Hope you're doing well, man. Blair, it says day 3 over day 2. That kind of feels like the consensus for a lot of people. I will say I really did like the Jonas Sanker pick on day 2 a ton, but I could get the day 3 love, right? I think Stutsman's a great pick. Quincy Riley's another one. I feel like I just snubbed him now because I didn't mention him in the best picks part because I was trying to be narrow. I didn't want to say I love every pick. I was trying to narrow which ones I really, really like. But Quincy Riley's a player. The more you keep watching, the more like, if they have a vision for this player, he could be a nice little addition to this secondary. Okay. Donald says need to get Ellen Moore canceled, to be honest. Not gonna lie, that's a good one. Good Nation says I would give this draft a B+. All right, positive vibes. I like it. Jerry says good draft, no complaints from me. Ed says I love both 4th round picks, and Neal was a steal in the 6th. Yeah, both 4th round picks with Stutsman and Quincy Riley I liked a lot. And Devin Neal, he's a guy I thought was gonna go 4th round. And before day 3 started, I put him on a little bit of a short list for, hey, I'd love to see the Saints draft this player. And they go out there and they end up getting him in the 6th. So I like that. Ed saying need receiver depth bad. I will get into that in a couple minutes because it is a concern. So let's get into our second topic. By the way, guys, I will continue from where I left off for comments. So do not worry. I'm not going to leave anyone stranded here. We'll be here all night if we have to. I'll make sure I get to everyone's comments. So wherever we just left off, which I believe was Ed's comment about receivers. So I'm going to jot that down just so I don't forget. I will make sure we keep going. I'll make sure we continue. So let's get into our second topic here on the Straight Up Saints podcast. And it's going to be a controversial one, obviously. Let's talk about Tyler Shough. I know you're going to see that little question, that little topic, is Shough QB1? And I don't mean, is he QB1 like in the draft, or QB1 like, man, this is a damn good quarterback? Because who the hell knows how he's going to pan out? There's a good chance that he ends up being a really bad quarterback. Older, what's the development process for him? A really bad injury history. There is arm talent there that's undeniable. He does remind me of Jared Goff to a good degree, but really athletic, right? Like Jared Goff with 4.6, a 4.6, 340 is an interesting quarterback. That said, what I mean by this, when you see this topic and you see this question, I know people will probably be like, man, I don't want to talk about Tyler Shough. What I'm here to talk about is this for the Saints. You drafted Tyler Shough with the 40th overall pick. He's going to be 26 at the end of September. He has to start as many games as possible this year. And I say this as someone who does like Spencer Rattler, and I say this as someone who's not sure what Tyler Shough could end up being. I do think you see a little bit of Jared Goff in his game. I also wouldn't be surprised if he just ends up flaming out in the NFL because it's a damn hard place to play. That said, you invested in him. Clearly Kellen likes the player. So you got to put that vision onto the field and hope that it ends up coming to fruition and you look good. Because if not, then why pick him 40? Why take a player who's going to be 26 in September 40 if he doesn't play this year? So when I see Tyler Shough and I see the pick, I understand fans aren't going to love it. I do think fans should try to rally around the player because, again, you could blame Loomis, you could blame Ireland, you could blame Kellen Moore. Feel bad to take it out on the player, and I would say this regardless of who they drafted in that spot. But you want to see Tyler Shough start because you need some clarity. Because the Saints, there's a very good chance, guys, and I'm not breaking any news here, that they're not going to make the playoffs next year. Very good chance, which means they'll have another top 10 pick most likely. And they need to get clarity over whether or not the Saints are, bad record-wise next season, but have their quarterback of the future, or if they don't have their quarterback of the future and they got to go draft another one. Because I am a big believer, if you don't have your quarterback, you just keep drafting. Having Jake Haener didn't stop the Saints from drafting Spencer Rattler, and clearly having Spencer Rattler didn't stop the Saints from getting Tyler Shough. And if Tyler Shuck's not good, even though you draft him 40th, shouldn't stop you from finding another quarterback. So my whole argument for this is he hopefully is ready to start week 1, and God damn it, he should be ready to start week 1, because if he's not, that's concerning. That's a little frustrating. And then on top of it, Mickey Loomis said today that as of now, if healthy, Derek Carr would be the starter for the Saints. I will say this as a fan. I am not one of those, if they do this, I'm not watching. You guys, first off, I have to. It's my job. But second, I love the team too much. I want to watch them. If the Saints drafted Tyler Shough 40 to start Derek Carr next season, I think that would be the final straw for this team when it comes to just being so far up there, taking their head and shoving it so far up their own ass that it's never going to get fixed. And again, I don't know if Tyler Shough's going to be a good NFL player. Like I said, history's not great, especially these aging prospects. I remember Brandon Weeden and how that didn't work out, although he is much more talented than Brandon Weeden, in my opinion, although Brandon Weeden had a better college career. If the Saints start Derek Carr week 1, there will be really bad pushback towards that. And I think, what kind of message would it send to the fan base if this dude, who all of a sudden his shoulder's feeling much better now, is ready to play? I think it's bullshit. What I would love to see is if the Saints put Tyler Shough, Spencer Rattler in a quarterback competition and said, may the best man win. Now, I do believe Tyler Shough will get preferential treatment. Some fans aren't going to like that. My only counter argument to that would be this. Kellen Moore took Tyler Shough for a reason. There's something about him that stands out to him, whether it's the arm talent, whether it's the mobility, throwing on the run, whatever it might be. I don't know what it is that was the ringing endorsement, but something made Kellen Moore want to draft Tyler Shough. So that's his guy. And while Kellen Moore has said great things about Spencer Rattler, and Spencer Rattler's busting his tail off behind the scenes, obviously, he is not Kellen Moore's guy, technically. He could become his guy. I will never rule that out, but he's not his guy. So there will be preferential treatment. So that is another reason why, Tyler Shough better be QB1 at least the beginning of the year. If he flames out so poorly where you're like, dude, he can't play quarterback in the NFL, we can't start him, by all means, you bench his ass. but he's got to start the season as QB1 because anything other than that makes me question the pick. Unlike other Saints fans, I'm not really questioning the pick right now. You know what? Kellen Moore says he has a vision after working with Jalen Hurts and working with Dak Prescott and working with Justin Herbert. I'll give you my grace. He's never coached a game before for the Saints. I got to have patience. But if you take that player and you're not ready to start him this year, then I start asking questions. Then I'm a little bit confused. So going to get back into more questions you guys have, and then I'll get into my biggest concern for the Saints now that the draft is over. We're going to pick up here with who we got. Jump Rack says, who dat? Chung says, going to beat them Saints. Nicole says, this draft wasn't the flashiest, but we needed these guys. We had a lot of holes to fill. And in the reality is, Nicole, they still have a ton more that they have to address, right? And I'll get into that for biggest concern post-draft for me because I think there's one that's so freaking glaring for this team and it scares the hell out of me. So I'll save that for a couple minutes from now to talk about the biggest weakness for the Saints. But yeah, look, they needed defensive line help. You got that with Vernon Broughton. You needed secondary help. You got that with Quincy. You got that with Jonas Sanker. You needed to get an offensive tackle. You got that in Kelvin Banks. You needed running back help. You got that in Devin Neal. You needed help on the D-line. Broughton and Diggs should maybe help potentially. You need a linebacker help. You get Stutsman. And then, Matavao at tight end. We'll see what he ends up developing into or if he ends up just being a blocking tight end. But either way, Saints needed to address needs, and they did that. Jamal says, why is Mickey Lyons saying Derek Carr will be the starter? What does he don't see about what Carr's showing him? Yeah, look, to be honest, the way I viewed it, I think the Saints are just saying what's politically correct. I don't think they're going to come out and say, fuck Derek Carr. He's not playing for us. Fans would love it, but that just doesn't happen in this NFL. It's never going to happen in professional sports. I hope that it's just being politically correct because if Derek Carr starts this season, I will be pretty disappointed. And, the Saints have given us fans plenty of reasons to be disappointed, but that one more than anything, a guy who couldn't wait to leave New Orleans during Super Bowl week, couldn't wait to talk about, I'm back in Fresno. Someone sent me the highlight reel of my season when it probably was just his fucking brother who sent him that video. And then to say, let me drop a shoulder injury report right before the draft, putting the Saints in a tough spot. And now it's like, we don't know if his shoulder's banged up. Those games are bullshit. Go let him be someone else's problem, whether it's the Browns, whether it's the Steelers, someone would take him. Saints should get rid of him. I think it's best for their culture to get rid of him. Joshua says solid B/B- draft. I feel that. Flight Mazark says, yes, this is a good draft. I like all the picks, basically. I like the optimism. DJ Trauma Game says, this is a bad draft. You're an idiot if you think otherwise. Look, like I said, I just I think it's tough to say whether it's a good or bad draft because we don't know how these players are going to pan out. I know now I'm the one speaking, politically correct, but it's just tough because I've been burnt before, guys. There's guys that I were like, I bet they're going to be good for the Saints, and they do end up being good. I remember, no joke, back then when the Saints did take Alvin, I was so pumped about that pick, and it's only because I watched a little bit of Tennessee that season. I was like, this guy seems crazy good, and I was excited about it. Now, on the other hand, I was excited when the Saints took Isaiah Foskey, and what the hell has he done for the Saints? So we just don't know. Tyler says, who dat? I give this draft a C. Not big on the quarterback pick. Hopefully I end up being wrong. Only other miss was not getting a wide receiver. Should have gotten Nash in the 7th. You mentioned wide receiver. We'll definitely talk about that in a second. Flight Mazark says we drafted guys that can immediately contribute. Definitely. Jerry says y'all got to get out of this funk and think positive. I don't disagree with that. St. Mike says overall the picks are decent. Stutsman will be a great leader. This wasn't the year the Saints were going to fix the quarterback position anyway with the limited choices. Shough will help until Arch comes home. See about Arch, I still have my doubts about whether or not he'll declare next year. I really feel like the Mannings are going to want to have him to kind of be in a 2-year situation, 2 full years of starting with the Longhorns and then coming over. Kermit says Rattler better than Sucks. Who's better than Carr? All right, fair enough. Flight Mazark says Stutsman immediately will be on the on-field playmaker. Yeah, I mean, I agree. He'll be on the field, and like you said, playmaker in college definitely was that. He probably is the most exciting to watch that the Saints took on tape because he's just like a shot of espresso at a linebacker position. But I felt the same way about Sanker. Sanker's a guy that the more I watch him, the more I'm really excited about watching his play. So. I'm excited about that. Jerry says, I love this draft. Donald says Stutzman's the next Ellis, Werner, Bond. Hope so. But I hope he's one of those that they keep, right? Didn't keep Zach Ball, and look how great he's become. Didn't keep Caden Ellis. He just had a really nice year. Jerry says, just because y'all upset, it doesn't make me upset. Or should it? Look, to each their own. If Saints fans want to be upset about this draft, you guys be upset about this draft. I can't tell you how to feel. And if you want to be pumped about this draft, be pumped about this draft. Come on. Like, let's see how it all plays out. Flight Mazark says, Neal takes what's there. I like it. He reminds me of Kamara in that way. Kermit says, I think Shough is just to give Rattler a confidence boost. Wouldn't that be the case, right? Like to use the 40th pick as a confidence boost. Tyler says, not giving up future draft capital is a win for this draft. The Shough pick means Carr never takes another snap in NOLA. If he ends up being bad, go back to quarterback next year. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, Tyler. I totally agree with you. So I will get into any other comments that we have left remaining, plus whatever you guys put in. Before I do that, just want to get to the final talking point of today's show, or tonight's show, I should say. And then it's all you guys with your comments and thoughts. I will pick up with Trey. Trey said something about Devin Neal that I like, really good comments. So we'll get into that. Before I do that, though, biggest concern post-draft for the Saints. They were not going to address all their needs. You guys mentioned it. Couldn't agree more with you guys. Like, the Saints had needs everywhere. Like, I think if ESPN and NFL Network wanted to be brutally honest, they should have just put, when it says, like, needs for the team during the draft when they're on the clock, just put everything. You can just put everything. There's nothing wrong with that. They need O-line, need D-line, need secondary help, need skilled players, receiver, running back, tight end, needed a quarterback, need offensive guard, need linebacker. I mean, they needed everything. They needed everything. Need a new GM. They need literally everything. And the one position that didn't really get addressed and got neglected, and I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to tank their season and they have themselves to blame, because they weren't going to fix everything. They weren't going to fix everything. I know, a lot of people are frustrated about this position that I'm about to mention, but like I said, I went in with that mentality that someone's going to get snubbed. And if they address this position, they probably would have ended up snubbing the D-line or the secondary. And that position's wide receiver. I look at the Saints right now. You guys know how I feel about Chris Olave. I think he's a very, very good player. I still think he could take his game up a notch. Like, I still think Olave's better than an 1,100-yard receiver. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he can hit 1,300, 1,400 yards if it all works out for him. Rashid Shaheed's a very good player, especially for an undrafted guy. I don't think he's a wide receiver 2, but I think he could be an excellent wide receiver 3, because I just don't think his route tree is as developed as other guys, like his co-star over there in Olave. Olave's route tree is far more developed. But Shaheed's a great player, especially at the value that you got him. Undrafted, he's been tremendous. Outside of those two and Alvin, who is the guy that the Saints are going to lean on offense? And that's what concerns me. And I was hoping they would add another pass catcher, because it's those two receivers I mentioned. It's Alvin out of the backfield, and it's Juwan Johnson in December and January, because Juwan Johnson, apparently, the production doesn't start coming until the end of the year. September, October, we expect Juwan to be great, doesn't do much, and then at the end of the year, he explodes for big-time games, and we see it every year. And the Saints invested a lot of money in Juwan Johnson this offseason, and maybe Kellen Moore unlocks that potential. But right now, he's maybe a solid player. I hope he becomes a good one. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'll include him just to be fair. You have 3 pass catchers and then your running back as your weapons, and you are not going to have everyone healthy. Like, I know I'd love to see these guys all healthy, but we see it every year with the Saints. They get depleted injury-wise, especially a wide receiver. And if Olave has to miss time, or Shaheed has to miss time, or Juwan has to miss time, one of them just goes down, and you're saying, well, what the hell? Like, who are you relying on in the passing game? And last year we just saw it. Valdez-Scantling, Dante Pettis, Kevin Austin Jr. Like, these were the guys they were throwing the football to because they were so depleted. So I am concerned about wide receiver, and I do think it's the biggest concern for this team now that the draft is over. Now, what can the Saints do to kind of like fix it temporarily, kind of put a Band-Aid over the wound? I think you go into the free agent market, you see what the vets are looking out like out there, if they're willing to come to New Orleans, knowing that they're not winning a Super Bowl anytime soon, but you get your money, maybe boost your value a little bit, and get to work with Kellen Moore. And what I thought was, well, maybe 2 receivers that worked with Kellen Moore in the past could be options. And those 2 guys that I just came across who are still free agents, who I still believe like, hey, maybe they can, come to the Saints and end up contributing a little bit, would be Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen. Now, there is concern with both of them. You already signed Brandon Cooks, and Brandon Cooks is declining, and he's older. Do you want to have like a geriatric receiving core? I don't know. But at this point, what alternative do you have if you're New Orleans? If you want to go with a vet who knows Kellen Moore's system so you don't have to worry about getting acclimated to it, they feel like you could kind of just slot him right into the position. Mari Cooper worked with him in Dallas. Keenan Allen worked with him in LA. There are connections there. Maybe. And again, it doesn't mean that's going to happen. It's just at this point, when you look at the receiver room and you know that it's depleted, where else can you turn? So I think that for the Saints, that is the biggest concern for them right now. And I think it is by a mile. That is their biggest weakness going into the 2025 season. And at this point, I say you bring in another vet, and next year, doesn't have to be the first round pick, but at some point next year, you got to double dip and get 2 weapons for this offense. Because right now, not a lot of juice when it comes to that group. So wide receiver, biggest concern, I don't even think it's a question. So let's get into our fan Q&A presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Going to continue from where we left off before, and we'll go from there. So said we were picking up with Trey, who's talking about Devin Neal. Let's get back to Trey's comment. Just give me 1 second. I lost my train of thought here. Trey said, Devin Neal has had 1K yards every season and is pretty healthy. Love the pick. Yeah, he had over 1,000 rushing yards in three consecutive seasons. I believe he's the all-time leading rusher for Kansas. And the thing about Devin Neal, really patient runner, reads his blocks well. I just think he's the type of player that Kellen Moore is going to love. Do I think he's going to be a tremendous player at the next level? No, but you got to start pushing Kendre Miller, right? Because he's never healthy anyway. So you got to add depth. They do that with Devin Neal. So I like the pick. Kermit says Shough isn't better than Rattler, in my opinion. Rattler will get cut and go succeed to an extreme degree like most other Saints do as soon as they leave the New Orleans Mickey Loomis disasters. I don't know if that's the case. I do like Rattler, though. I'm not going to act like I dislike the dude. Now, Jay Kane, on the other hand, I think they could get rid of. Xavier says, not the biggest fan of the quarterback pick. However, I will withhold judgment due to Moore getting the roster where he wants it. That's fair. I think I kind of would love if more people were kind of like that, but doesn't seem to be the case. Let's keep it rolling here. Brian says we need Ja'Cory Brooks from Louisville. How did he go undrafted? Good size. I hope we sign him. I haven't seen anything yet about him getting signed. Maybe that happens soon. And hey, clearly the Saints were watching Louisville tape between taking Tyler Shough and taking Quincy Riley. So, that's, who knows? Maybe they had a third. We'll see if they do just that. Lou says we need a big wide receiver, Chris, for sure. I can't deny that. That's the biggest problem for them, man. Flight Mazark says Quincy's another playmaker. I love all the picks. Quincy was an impact player in college. He was. Not going to hate Shough just because he's 26. Not going to hate Shough because he got hurt. No, to hate these players regardless would be crazy. Like, we haven't even seen them perform for the Saints yet. I will say the injury history is what concerns me way more than him turning 26 in September. Gary says, did you see that combine throw from Shough that's going around? I saw that thing like weeks ago, man. I still don't know what the fuck he was doing, honestly. Like, it's one of those plays where you're like, of course this guy's on the Saints. But one throw does not define his career, obviously, and won't. It'll be up to him, right? But stuff like that doesn't go away, obviously. It's a really bad video. Like, he looks like he's just like out of nowhere, just plants his foot and decides to drive the ball into the ground 7 feet away from the receiver, Brian bringing up Ja'Cory Brooks again. Good production would be a nice signing for the Saints. Yeah, we'll see if they do that. Jump Rack says, Shough just means no more DC4. I'm down with it. Yep. I'm with you. Ryan says, do you think Willie Green helped him make the first round pick? Why was he in the war room, dude? Why was he in the war room? Like, I know it's like a joint operation, but it still looks ridiculous in my opinion. It's still ridiculous. Whatever. Shough can comfortably push the ball down the field. He's 6'5". I like it. We don't need another 6-foot quarterback. Gary says, shit, if you could throw to a guy in one-on-ones, who the heck you do it? Shit, if you can throw to a guy in one-on-ones, who the heck you do it Sunday? Kind of lost me there, Gary. But to be fair, my brain's like kind of mush right now. Feel like I overworked myself the last couple of days. Big Chippa says, should have took Sanders, best quarterback in the draft. We'll see if that happens, man. Shedeur ends up going into a crowded room in Cleveland. I'm going to be rooting for Shedeur, obviously. Like I said that day, I've had conversations with Shedeur. I always thought he was respectful. So when they said the interview stuff didn't go well, I was a little thrown off by that. It didn't really make sense to me. But I don't think he's the best quarterback in this draft, though. I do think the best quarterback in this draft was Cam Ward. A lot of teams felt that way, clearly. James says, if Carr doesn't play or leaves, you need a good backup for Rattler. This guy can be that. Plus, Kellen likes what he has seen on film. Are we talking about Shough being the backup for Rattler, or I don't know. I mean, I imagine they're going to end up starting Shough. I feel like, they invested in him and that's their guy for now. I mean, how long he's the guy who, it's up to him to determine that, but I'd be shocked if they don't kind of give him the go-ahead there. Let's keep it moving here. Donald says he'll retire after his rookie contract. I mean, what's crazy? After his rookie contract, he'll be 30 already? Like, that's kind of wild, I mean, not trying to make fun of age. I mean, I'm pushing 30, so, who am I to talk? Dan says, I'm sorry, but Kellen Moore is a weak-minded person, in my opinion. Sorry. Hope I'm wrong. I don't know how you come to that conclusion this early, but to each their own. I'm still a little confused on that one, Blair says, most of the time bad drafts happen when they trade up and have too few picks. I like that they kept all their picks, more bites at the apple. Yeah, no, great point. I always go back to 2020. They're like, oh, well, it was the COVID year. We only made 4 picks. Yeah, great. I mean, your picks were Cesar Ruiz. So great. That worked out so fucking well. You took Zach Bond. That one should have worked out, but it just didn't work out for you. It worked out for the Eagles. You took Adam Troutman, who I thought I think that was Adam Troutman, who I thought for the Saints was going to be a good player. And Adam Troutman didn't end up doing anything for them. And then last but certainly not least, they tried to spite the Panthers by taking Tommy Stevens, and then Tommy Stevens never played a fucking game for the Saints. So, I do like that they kept all their picks, like you said. More bites at the apple. Rosenfield 10 said Saints signing undrafted free agent running back Marcus Yarns, Jasheen Davis, and Virginia wide receiver Chris Tyree. Good players, but the wide receiver is 5'9", relative athletic score 9.52. And maybe kick. That's where the Saints like to get their kick returner, punt returner. Kind of get him from undrafted class. Kermit says Arch hasn't even started yet. Yeah, he hasn't even been a full-time starter yet. That's like why I keep telling people it's not like knocking him. I do think that the Saints, if they need a quarterback and any other team that need a quarterback would like for him to declare, I just don't think he's going to declare after one season. I think he's going to play 2 full seasons and then go. And then you have to make sure he plays well, right? Just being a Manning is not going to be enough. Now, will he get screwed over the way like Shedeur just did? Probably not, but he's got to play well if he's going to be the consensus number 1 pick that everyone's labeling him to be. And I'm not comparing the two situations. Everyone's different. And when Arch had limited playing time this year, I thought he did look good for Texas, and his mobility is very impressive. Quinn Ewers was like the number 1 recruit in his class, and goes to Ohio State, then transfers after 1 year, goes to Texas, and Quinn Ewers was a 7th round pick this year. And I'm not saying Arch is going to be a 7th round pick, not at all. I'm just saying, just because you are the number 1 guy in high school and presumed number 1 in college, it just doesn't always work out that way. So we'll see. Walltown Best 88 says it wasn't sexy picks, but it provides depth pieces that we need. Yeah. Black Tool says we just got 1 more to get out of here. Mickey Loomis and the Saints will be great again. Fingers crossed that happens, man. Fingers crossed. All the picks are safe with good floors. We'll see the ceilings in time. I do think they did get a lot of high floor guys. I agree with that. Banks, high floor. Also think high ceiling, though. I really do think he has a really, really high ceiling. Sanker, high ceiling guy. Floor guy. Stutsman, high floor type of player. Quincy Riley, high floor type of player. So, Saints are going for that. They need some immediate contributors. Ed says Shough has had freak injuries. His lower leg was from a hip drop, and his shoulder issue is healed. I think he's going to be decent. Man, I hope he is. And as I said, guys, if he ends up being good, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, you guys hated on him and now you're going to switch up. No, we should be rooting for him. If he starts week 1, he's the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And until he gives you a reason to not root for him, you should root for him. That's the way I view it. Doesn't mean you have to love the pick. You can hate the pick for all you want. The minute they put on that black and gold, though, they are our players in terms of who we root for. And unless they do something wrong to spite the city, spite the team, I think you should be rooting for the guy. That's just the way I view it. Trey says broken bones are freak injuries, unlike hamstring soft tissues. Fair enough. Ed says if the Saints can stay healthy, we can be fun and maybe decent. What I will say about the Saints is they are going to be, at the very least, interesting. And interesting doesn't mean good. Interesting doesn't mean bad. But new coach, presumed new quarterback, it's something new. And it might get ugly quick, and we might be like, well, God, this team's picking top 5. But it's going to be different from what they've been the last couple of years, which is kind of like stuck in the mud of we're okay. We're not bad enough to get a top 5 pick. We're not good enough to make the playoffs in a shitty division, and that's the worst spot to be. So they won't be in that spot, in my opinion. Flight Mazark says, Shough had injuries. Most guys retired from the sport from, came back and balled out in an NFL-style offense. What more do y'all need to see? Gary says, oh, he needs some milk. So that's why I kind of laughed before while reading another comment. I kind of jumped the gun. I saw that one. You made me chuckle, Gary. You made me chuckle. Context Matters says, I like this draft. It's a start. Oh, yeah, I like the positivity. Xavier says, don't forget we got Cooks. Yeah, it kind of slipped my mind when I was going through the receivers at first till I caught on the back end oh, yeah, they did have a Brandon Cooks reunion. 2-year, $13 million. That was a crazy contract now I'm thinking about it. I'm optimistic because usually our draft picks don't look this solid. Basically, all those guys were team captains or consistent impact, disruptive players. Go look for yourselves. Hey, look, man, I'm digging the positivity. More of that, please. Loving the positivity. Because, by September, October, we're all probably going to be pessimistic as fuck. So let's get our positivity in there. Kermit says Shough has played one full season. How is that balling out? I do think that is the concern. Why I said he's probably a statistical anomaly if he ends up being a good quarterback. Older players, 7 years of college is crazy. At some point they got to tell these guys to get a fucking job, but now he's got one. 7 years of college, so many injuries, but one real good season. If he ends up being great or even good, that doesn't happen often. And the odds will tell you no. Hennessy says it's odd to draft a veteran quarterback in a rookie draft. And Nicole says we signed a wide receiver from SMU and one from Virginia. I'll pull up the undrafted list for them. For the SMU one is Kelvin Dixon and then Chris Tyree from Virginia. So we'll see. Not a long undrafted class for the Saints this year, which low key, kind of a good thing. And not to, I don't want any of these players to get their opportunities gypped, and they won't. There's 32 teams that are going to give them opportunities here. Sometimes the Saints have a CVS receipt of undrafted guys, and it's well, what do you expect to build out your whole roster from that? That's just not going to work, man. Shaqzilla says Shough has a fragile body and does the same as Carr under pressure, throws the ball away, or makes boneheaded mistakes. The interesting thing about Shough is this, right? There are moments where he gets skittish and then just throws the most egregious pick. And that reminds me of Derek Carr. And then there's other plays though. And I'll find the video and maybe I'll share it on Twitter. It's about 10 minutes long of him throwing the ball away. Not because he got scared, but the play's not there to be had. So you just throw it away to be make the veteran move. And that part is interesting. If you could have more of that and less of the panic throws, then that is a good player. And the one thing I will say about Shough, just to give him, some credit, but I do agree, there are similarities to Carr's game where you get a little too happy and don't want to get hit and you make a mistake. He did only have 6 picks in college last year. And I do think that is worth pointing out. But I do understand the comparisons to Derek Carr, and I don't disagree with you. Dan says Cooks is cooked. Most likely. The numbers are obviously declining, and they're declining pretty fast, and that is concerning. Rosenfield 10 says, we won't completely know about this class for 4 years. It's the draft picks that stick around post-rookie contract that really make a draft class good or not. Yes and no. Yes and no. I agree with you, right? If you get them on a second contract, that means you did your job. But, you have guys that play really well and then kind of move on. Caden Ellis gave the Saints a really good year of football and then left. And while, it's frustrating when I left, I'd still consider it a good pick because for a 7th-round guy to give you one really good season, I'll take it. Lou says Saints signed SMU wide receiver Moochie Dixon. His agency announced Dixon ran a scout time 4.38 40-yard dash at his pro day. So there's some speed to it. There's some speed. Ed says we wouldn't mind Cooper. He can still make plays. Allen's injury prone. I I think Keenan Allen, too, it's tough because he's on the Chargers team with Staley, and like Staley's on the Saints coaching staff. I know things did not end great there. I also don't know if Keenan Allen wants to play in New Orleans. I wouldn't be surprised if Keenan Allen wants to go back to the West Coast and just chill over there. And, if the Rams come calling, or if the Chargers say, hey, fuck it, we'll take you back. Like, wouldn't be surprised. Or the Niners say, hey, we need another receiver. Like, I would not be shocked if that's what ends up happening. So we'll see. But Cooper and Keenan Allen look like the Kellen Moore connections there. So I figured it is worth mentioning them. I feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't, Shaq Zilla says I've been going through some film to see, and he's not in. I'm assuming that's about Shough. Like I said, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions, good or bad, about Shough till we see him play in the NFL. I think he does some things that are really good. I do think it's concerning that he only has one good year of college football. And we're going to find out if that one good year of college football is what he's going to end up becoming, or if that is the anomaly and he just goes right back to being what he was before, which was an underperforming, injury-prone quarterback. And like I said, either this guy ends up panning out for the Saints and they feel like, hey, we got our quarterback and that will really expedite the rebuild for this team, or he'll be bad and they'll be picking quarterback top 5. So, that's just how I view it, man. That's just how I view it. J-Dog again says, what do you actually think about Shough? I mean, I wish I didn't just chat my ass off right there, because then I could have just answered that. But yeah, look, I think Shough has really good arm talent. I think he just puts the ball on a rope. It's effortless with him. Stands, obviously measurable wise, being 6'5" is huge. Being able to run a 4.63 is really impressive. His athleticism is on display. I love how he can throw on the move, especially when he rolls left. He makes some nasty ass throws rolling to his left. But as I mentioned before, he's not perfect. He does get really, really happy feet when pressure's coming at him in the pocket. That definitely, kind of is pretty discouraging. I do think that his injury history is a little alarming. I know broken bones is different than, ACL tears and hamstring tears or whatever. So that is a little different. But that does concern me. I do think, and I know this is used against him, I do think that him being around different programs, you hope that he's gotten used to different terminology. And I think he is more pro ready than a lot of these other guys that were taken. Now, he's 26 in September. He should be pro ready. Like, come on. But I do like that about him. But I think that he is, and maybe I end up being wrong. I think his ceiling is probably a good quarterback, maybe not a team elevator, though, if it all works out. And again, we don't know. When people said earlier today they remind him of Jared Goff, I tweeted that I would take that in a heartbeat. I know people are like, well, fuck Jared Goff. And yeah, fuck Jared Goff and anyone who was part of that no-call Rams team. But Jared Goff's a good quarterback, especially when you build around him. Now, the Saints don't have the pieces right now, which is why I don't think that Shough's going to come into the league and light it up at all. But I do think there is talent there. But I think the Saints, and the reason I want them to start all 17 games is I want the season to finish and them to know if, hey, this guy's going to be a starter for year 2 again, or, yeah, we're done with this experiment. Like, I want them to get clarity on this. And if they can do that, that'd be great. Ideally, you'd love, this is asking for a lot, but you'd love to be able to kind of get like a Bo Nix type experience, because Bo Nix at the beginning of the year was not great. And he finished the year with 29 touchdowns and 12 picks, which is, tremendous. But I'm going to pull up the game logs for Bo Nix. I mean, Bo Nix started his career, by the way, guys. So this is why you have to have patience with rookie quarterbacks. In his first 4 games, he had 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. In his last 13 games of the season, he had 28 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So you have to have patience with quarterbacks. And the reason I bring up Bo Nix, and Bo Nix was a better college player than Tyler Shough, I'm not going to deny that. Bo Nix, though, was in college for 5 years, and he is already 25, and people have mocked him about his age and whatnot. And him and Shough are, I believe, 4 months apart. And again, I don't think he's going to be Bo Nix. I thought Bo Nix had an excellent rookie season. I'm just trying to say, like, if he struggles out the gate, that could be who he is. But Bo Nix looked terrible the first 4 games of the season, and then he really turned it on. And if you're going to say, well, it's because he had Sean Payton, absolutely. But you know what? Us Saints fans have to hope that Kellen Moore is a damn good coach. And if he isn't, we'll find out that at some point next year too. A-Cam says, Shough ain't bad. He's just average. At best, he's literally car, but cheaper. I guess that's the only positive. I don't hate the pick. I hate the spot with so much talent out there. Still 5th round. Here's the thing I would say about the Derek Carr comp, because a lot of people bring it up, and I don't disagree with it per se. I'm just curious what you guys think, because I know how I feel about this. If Derek Carr had like the personality or like leadership skills of like a Jalen Hurts or like a Brock Purdy or even Jared Goff, where you're like, you don't really hear a peep from them. They say the right things. They, all their teammates love them, because those 3 guys I picked, because I know all of them, they are beloved by their teammates, but they're not considered elite quarterbacks, obviously. If you had a Derek Carr type quarterback without the Derek Carr attitude, would it be easier to rally around a guy like that? I think it would be. Derek Carr obviously isn't a great quarterback. I think he's an average quarterback. But what gets me annoyed about Derek Carr is the way he conducts himself off the field and on the field, on the sideline, like barking at Chris Olave after he throws a ball about 100 rows deep into the Superdome. But maybe I'm on an island on that. But I think that's what frustrates me the most, Hakeem says, this is Kellen Moore's team. I know they didn't draft a lot of players you wanted, but it's about trusting the process of the new regime. Amen to that. Lane says, had a chance to watch Devin Neal in person for several years at Kansas. Dude's a gamer and should take the pressure/workload off of Alvin so he can stay healthy. I'd love that. And then also you could maybe use Alvin, as a pass catcher a little bit more and not have to just run him in between the tackles nonstop. Gary says, I'm hearing Shough is ready to play day one, right? Most NFL ready quarterback. I don't want to hear that be patient talk when he's throwing interceptions left and right. That part is different. And by the way, I did just give the Bo Nix statistic about 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions in his first 4 games. So you do have to be patient with rookie quarterbacks. And by patient, I mean you let the 17 games play itself out. Like last year, guys, obviously it wasn't going to happen because it was the second year of Derek Carr. But when Derek Carr got hurt, I was a big believer in just play Rattler the rest of the fucking season. Now, you played Rattler, then Haener came in for that 1 start, which was so freaking bad. Then Carr came back, and then Carr decided to, pull a Jeff Hardy and swanton bomb his way into an injury. And, there you go. Then he's out and Rattler's back in. But you got to be patient in that regard. He better be ready to start, though, obviously, But if he has 1 bad game, that isn't the end of his career. I'd be saying the same thing about Spencer. Guys, had the Saints not drafted a quarterback and they were like, hey, we're just going to roll with Spencer, I'd be saying the same freaking thing about Spencer Rattler. Play him all 17 games. Let's see the dude play and then make your decision. And it might come to that. It still might come to that. You never know. Maybe Rattler ends up starting for them. Whoever it is, I'm going to be patient, but I want them to get closure in terms of what's your confidence level for next year. But you can only do that by playing them all 17 games. So that's just where my thought is at. Keem says, Coach Moore is building the team in his image. Former team came from starting in the trenches. For sure. For sure. And you mentioned now you can have your bookend tackles for the next 7 years. That is the hope. That is the hope, because if you're able to do that, then you'll be able to build off that. If you have offensive linemen who are fantastic, everything kind of trickle down through that. A-Camp says, I'm not so sure Carr's gone. Mickey said he's the starter if he wants. Maybe that's why we didn't get Sanders, still appeasing Carbage feelings. Look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And boy, I'd be fucking livid. I think they said what they said today because they just got to play the game right now with Derek Carr. They're playing the game of, yeah, he's still our starter if he wants to play. And Derek Carr's got to make the decision if his shoulder's healthy or not. And if his shoulder is healthy, you go, okay, we're trading you, by the way. I don't think they're starting Derek Carr. I really don't. If they do, I'll be so aggravated. So aggravated. I'll drop all my things and do a live stream for sure. Hakeem mentioned that before. Pull that up. If they want the max production out of Olave, get the man an X receiver, makes everyone's life easier. I couldn't fucking agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And unfortunately, they still don't. They still don't. Hakeem says, Kellen Moore got the guy he wanted. I don't care for Shough, but if that's who Moore wants, then I got to roll with it. Feel ya. Kermit's letting us know how I feel. Says Shough sucks. Shough sucks sounds kind of funny, though. I'm not going to lie. A-Camp says, one thing for sure is I think we're going to have a solid line, all first-round draft picks. They got to stay healthy. Maybe they'll make an average quarterback look better. And forget about that, right? And this is why you got to hit on these O-line picks, because they can't keep doing this every year. It's getting freaking ridiculous. If Banks hits, you feel good about Fuaga. I thought Fuaga had a really good rookie year. You know McCoy's good. If Ruiz can just be competent, and then you get something out of, Dylan Radins or whoever's playing left guard, if that unit's good, your run game should be better. If your run game's better, less pressure, on your quarterback. Maybe the box is stacked a little bit, can air it out a little bit more, utilize Olave, utilize Shaheed. So, it all kind of trickles down for sure. Rosenfield 10 says wide receivers, Will Shepard, Sam Brown, Theo Ways, Elijah Badger, Juice Wells, Nick Nash, Isaiah Bond, Andrew Armstead, Isaiah Nair are still available. Undrafted free agent. Did Isaiah Bond still out there? Man, I remember when I watched Isaiah Bond at Alabama, I thought he was going to be a special player. I was like, I think he's got next. And he's all right at Texas this past season, but he really didn't, impress me enough. But yeah, I guess he's still out there. Let's see. Did he get signed yet? Seems like he's still unsigned. If that changes, obviously, y'all let me know, and maybe I missed it, but I am a little surprised by that. 2 years ago, I would have said that this is going to be a really good player. Reed Wilson says, newsflash, we've always built the team from the trenches. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, just go over the last decade. Andrews Pete, Ryan Ramczyk, Ruiz, McCoy, Fuaga, Penning, now Banks. They invest, even defensive line. Brian Brzee, Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport. They invest in that pretty high, Jaden says, hey, I am not a big fan of the Tyler Shough pick at 40, but this is Kellen Moore's first draft as a Saint, so I will give him time to build the team the way he wants since this is an old roster. I respect it. And again, you guys don't have to like the pick, but let's just see how it plays out. And if it doesn't work, by all means, fire away, but let's see how it goes. And to Flight Mazark's point, right? Like you're hoping Kellen's a quarterback whisperer. That's what you got to hope, Nat says, I love the draft. I give them a B+, love all the picks. C- for the draft, wasting the number 2 pick. The duality of people, right? One C-, other B+. We'll see who ends up being right, obviously. I just hate grading stuff just because, I don't know, guys. I watched Tyler Shough. I watched Kelvin Banks, watched Sanker, but, I can't, and I love football. I can't sit here today and give you an honest to God assessment and tell you, I watched every snap of Quincy Riley. I didn't. So I don't know. But it is fun to read grades. I'm sure that's probably what I'll be doing before I go to bed. I'll probably be just sitting on my phone, looking at CBS, Bleacher Report, ESPN, whatever it may be. Jaden says, what do you think Kellen Moore's first play call will be for the black and gold? I think he's going to run the fucking football. And I don't know what it'll be, but establish the run. Establish the run early. Hakeem says, only concern I have is we didn't get that big body chain mover at receiver. I was hoping they'd maybe get Higgins. He clearly was a hot commodity for this draft because Jaden Higgins, I think, was picked 34th. And after Jaden Higgins got picked by the Texans, a bunch of teams traded out. And when that happens, I think a lot of teams are telling you, okay, the guy that we wanted ended up getting picked. Maybe Michael Thomas can come play again for the Saints. Don't believe that's going to be happening. But how funny would that be if they cut Derek Carr or trade Derek Carr and then the next move they make is bring in Michael Thomas? I think that would be so freaking hilarious. Austin says, if Rattler beats Shough outright again and again, is it still Shuck's job because Kellen drafted him? Do you think Rattler can win Kellen over if he's the clear better quarterback? I do. What I would say is it needs to be by a wide margin and it needs to be evident for people to see, right? It would need to be beat him out in practice, but more importantly, when the preseason games start, Shough needs to look bad and Rattler needs to look really fucking good. And even then, I can't say for certain if Rattler would be the week 1 starter. Do I think if Shough kept struggling, they would put Rattler in? I do, because at some point you have a job to do. And the worst thing you could ever do, you make a mistake in the NFL, you make a mistake. The worst thing you can do is when you refuse to move off from a mistake. That's where you really damage yourself. And I actually think that's what the Saints have, when they've gone in this hole a lot, it's from that. Doubling down on Dennis Allen, doubling down on Derek Carr, just things that didn't work. And, right now I do think Shuck's going to get the preferential treatment and, you try to kind of groom him as the starter. But look, if he doesn't end up playing well, he doesn't end up playing well. Rosenfield 10 says Charles Grant and Holland Pierce are UDFAs. I want them. We'll see if the Saints add more. I think right now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 undrafted free agents. Jaden says, I like the draft. It was okay. I give a C+. It was Kellen Moore's first draft. I think Kellen did okay. Go Kellen, and who dat? Go Saints. Hakeem says, I would have loved that Stanford wide receiver that got picked in the 4th round. He was definitely a fan favorite I saw on a lot because I don't have to interact with all of them, but I'm chronically on Saints Twitter. I saw he was a very popular mock draft pick for people. You know? Jake says, so you guys learned about Carr, huh? You may like Shough better. I mean, we definitely learned the hard way about Carr, that's for sure. Although I'm gonna be honest, this is where I try to be fair. There's a lot of Saints fans who did not want Derek Carr when they signed him. I stupidly thought, hey, change his scenery. Maybe he can pick up from like the playoff season that he had a year before they signed him. No, couldn't win the worst division in football. So, it did not work, and that is one of those contracts that's really hurt this team. Hakeem says Stutsman was a clutch pick, better version of Pete Werner. Glad we addressed the linebacker. We haven't gotten anything out of linebackers drafted the last 2 years. Definitely needed to get help there. Giovanni says, I guess we have to trust the process. Fingers crossed it all works out. Ed says Bo Nix was trash against the Saints, but Sean Payton's a great coach, so he got better. Yep, for sure. And again, that's why I just trying to, practice a little bit of patience there with the rookie quarterbacks. Hakeem says, man, it sucks that Rattler probably won't get a fair shot to start because the regime picked their guy. I still got hope for Rattler, though. Let it all play out. Let's see how it goes. I do think that, I think at the very least, and maybe I'm wrong, I think Rattler showed enough as a rookie where, I think he'll be around this league for at least the duration of his rookie contract, and even after that, he might be able to. So we'll see how it goes. But I will be rooting for both of these two young quarterbacks. And those are the two that you hope one of them cracks through and becomes the guy for the Saints. Too Slow 77 says, trust the new process. Haven't played nothing yet. I agree. Sack King Superfan says, I'm a Saints fan from Sacramento. That's pretty freaking awesome. But do you think that Banks and Fuaga could be a top O-line duo in the NFL? On paper, yeah, for sure. Why couldn't they be? I would say the two teams right now that are going that route, the Saints are trying to go that route with Fuaga and Banks, and the Jets are trying to do that with Membu and Fashanu. So, let's see. I thought Fashanu had a nice season with the Jets. Fuaga obviously had a really nice season with the Saints. Membu and Banks, those two hit. Jets and Saints are going to be looking like pretty smart teams in terms of having those bookend tackles. And, if you end up hitting that, we don't have to worry about the Saints drafting an offensive tackle for the next 7 years. Hakeem says this season should be the year we make an evaluation on if we need to draft another quarterback in 2026. I agree. Name Not Dot says, I think the relationship is too tarnished to keep Carr. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And that's another reason why I don't think he'll be coming back. Blair says, oh man, a Jeff Hardy reference, top 3 straight up Saints podcast ever. Let me just tell you something, guys, real quick, because I know this isn't about the Saints, but let me just, young me, my favorite people to watch, you guys know born a New Yorker. My favorite athlete growing up was Derek Jeter, but my favorite entertainer to watch was Jeff Hardy. Dressed as Jeff Hardy for Halloween twice. I wore the chain with the Hardy Boy symbol on it. When he would lose belts, when he won the WWE Championship, I still have that on DVD, actually. It was Armageddon, I think 2008. My favorite moment as a wrestling fan ever to this day. And because I was young and I wasn't in the know of Jeff Hardy's battles with, kind of addiction away from the ring, I'd always wonder why WWE would give him the belt just for him to lose it a month later. And then now that I'm older, it's okay, because they couldn't trust him to kind of stay clean, unfortunately. But Jeff Hardy was the most electrifying wrestler that I watched in my life. Now, do I think he's the best wrestler ever? Obviously not, but he's my favorite. And to this day, when people's who are your favorite athletes? I know they're wrestlers and it's scripted. I throw Jeff Hardy in that list, man. I can't tell you how many great memories I had as 11, 12, 13 years old, where every Monday Night Raw had to watch and see what Jeff Hardy was going to do. I have very fond memories there. So, that's why I made the reference. But probably won't be the last time I make a reference there. Trey says, what do you think is the starting O-line lineup week 1? It's a great question. I think Banks and Fuaga are going to be your tackles. I kind of think they're going to move Fuaga to right tackle. Obviously McCoy at center, Ruiz at right guard. Left guard's the interesting one. Can Penning play guard has been the question for the last 3 years, right? And I would love to see the Saints just try it. Just try and camp, see if he could play it. Because the one thing Penning is good at is run blocking. And I think, guard, put him in between McCoy and Banks or put him between McCoy and Fuaga. Man, he should be good. But, just hasn't been, they haven't really done that move yet. I would love to see them do it, but they haven't. So if it's not McCoy, then probably like Dylan Radin's there at left guard. That would be my guess, but we'll see. Ed says, can Penning play guard? He's a good run blocker. It's $1 million question, man. $1 million question. Lou says, I've seen Mike Triplett talk about using Penning at guard, and that's what we need. He needs to concentrate on that, in my opinion, because I want Banks at left tackle and Fuaga at right tackle. Yeah, and for me, it's like, well, what happens if Penning is a good guard? Like, imagine. Then you got Penning, McCoy, Banks, Ruiz, and Fuaga. 4 of those 5 would be first-round picks. That'd be a lot of talent there, A lot of talent on that line. Flight Mazark said Carr never should have even been here to begin with. You're not wrong. Name Not Dot says, no way, MT's coming back. I think ownership and management don't want him, and he has nothing to do with Carr. I agree with that. Cody says the draft doesn't bother me, but they might lose me if Carr starts again. I do worry that could happen. I do worry about that. Rosenfield 10 says Banks A, Shough C, Broughton C, Sanker B, Stutsman A, Riley A+, Neal A+, Matavao B, Diggs A, but what does anyone know anyway? We don't know. I do appreciate you giving grades for each play, though. That's a nice, thorough. Like, a lot of people just give a grade for the class. Well, it's like, how did you get to that grade? So shout out to you, man, for giving your grades for each pick. Hakeem says that Stanford wide receiver tore Travis Hunter's ass up when he played against him. He did. He did. And that was like the only time I really saw a receiver just like thoroughly beat Travis Hunter up at the collegiate level. Jimmy Horn says, how are we feeling about our DBs going to the season? A little bit better, honestly. I was worried about that, but look, Quincy Riley could end up being a player. Obviously I talked about Jonas Sanker before. I think he's going to be a nice player for them. Saints obviously upgraded their safety room in a major way in free agency, getting Justin Reed. I think he's going to be a nice glue guy for them. Great to stop the run, which, by the way, is something that the Saints are going to be much better at this year as opposed to last year. They put an emphasis on getting guys that can stop the run. So, that to me is a big thing. But my biggest question is, will Kool-Aid McKinstry solidify himself as a boundary corner that is a really good player? Remember, you invested a second-round pick in him. And Alante Taylor, is he a slot guy only? Or can he play on the outside and end up being a really nice player for the Saints? Like, that's my question that I have for them. Flight Mazark says the rookie tackle will allow everyone to play their natural positions, in my opinion. I agree, and I hope so. Reed says Owen Harden, Scott Steiner, and RVD, best technical wrestler we've ever seen, all outside. RVD really wrestle. I don't want to sound like a moron. There's no other RVD other than Rob Van Dam, right? Because that's like the RVD I know. I don't know if I ended up, if I missed someone along the way back in wrestling. So, like, when I think RVD, I think Rob Van Dam. So, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But Rob Van Dam was pretty good. Pretty damn good. I forgot which. I think I have on DVD when he beat Cena and Paul Heyman was like the undercover ref, whatever that was. So, I have that one somewhere. I'll have to go dig up my wrestling DVDs. Jaden says we need a big body wide receiver for the Saints. I think Kellen Moore and the Saints will sign Keenan Allen. We'll see. It's possible. Look, I'd keep him on the radar. Jaden says, hey, what do you grade the Saints draft? I graded a C+. What do you grade it? Look, if I had to give it a grade, I'd probably go B-. I think that Sanker and Stutsman are nice, like, mid-round picks that are going to help. I think Devin Neal's a nice late-round pick that's going to help. I think Banks is going to be an immediate impact guy for this team. I'm a very good player. So, feeling generous, I'll go B-. And, I don't hate Shough as much as everyone else, so I guess that's why I'll go B-. But I don't know how they're going to pan out, guys. I really don't. DJ Trauma gave me another super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Says, at Rosenfield 10, what do we know? Probably not much, except that we've been one of the worst drafting teams in the last 10 years. Be quiet, please. Well, I don't like the be quiet, please part. That's, a little harsh. But the Saints have struggled drafting. I will give you that. I'll give you that for sure. We're almost getting to a close here, and I'm running out of gas anyway. I've been working my tail off the last 3 days, but let's get through the last 2 drafts. Actually, no. We'll go 2023 draft and 2022. Because 2024, last year's draft, let's give him patience. 2023, the Saints took Brian Brzee. All right, hit. Isaiah Foskey, miss. Kendra Miller, miss. Nick Saldiveri, miss. Jake Haener, miss. Jordan Howden, I'm going to say hit for a 5th-round pick, but whatever. A.T. Perry, miss. So 1 definite hit and 1 maybe. 2022, Olave, hit. Penning, miss. Alontae Taylor, hit. DeMarco Jackson, miss. Jordan Jackson, miss. So 2 hits, 3 misses. 2021, Peyton Turner, miss. Pete Werner, hit. Paulson Adebo, hit. Ian Book, miss. Landon Young, I'm going to go miss, but he does a depth piece. Quan Baker, definite miss. 2020, Ruiz, middle. I lean more miss than hit, but he is a starter and they did pay him. So let's say hit. Zach Bond didn't hit for them, but he did hit. Troutman, miss. Tommy Stevens, miss. So yeah, they've had rough ones. 2018, Davenport, whatever. Traquan Smith, injuries. Rick Leonard, missed. Natrell Jamerson, missed. Cameron Moore, missed. Will Clapp, missed. Boston Scott, didn't do much for them. So, obviously the draft history hasn't been great for this team. Is Blake Ruby going to be our kicker next year? I did see improvement from him last year. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be honest. I haven't even thought about hey, do you need to go get another kicker? Blake Ruby went 27-31 last year. One of the few bright spots for this team. Rosenfield 10 says, I thought the 2023 Saints class was very good. 2 years later, I was very wrong. Yeah, I liked that class too as well. Jimmy Horn says, do we remember Carl Nix? Dude was a monster guard. Hopefully Penning can be close to that. Man, if he was a 10th of Carl Nix, I'd be pumped up. Flight Bizarre says, Jake Haener is going to be our kicker next year. Wouldn't that be funny? Having a tall, strong arm quarterback that likes to throw the ball outside the numbers will definitely help you get a free agent receiver. Fingers freaking crossed, man. A lot of boomer bust picks in our past, but guess what? If you're going to draft like that, you have to be able to actually develop the players. For sure, man. The Zach Bond stuff's frustrating. And that's why, I'd love to see them play Trevor Penning at guard just to see, because, imagine if another team gets Trevor Penning after his rookie contract expires, which he's on the last year of his deal, and then he ends up being a Pro Bowl guard. And I say that because, the Eagles just last year got Mekhi Becton, who was a tackle with the Jets and didn't pan out, and they kicked him to left guard, and Mekhi Becton earned himself a nice free agent contract because he had a nice season with the Eagles. Now, Eagles have been great at developing and, really getting the best out of their offensive linemen, but it's proof. You got to have the right coaching in the building. Really have to. So, guys, we've been going for about 70 minutes. Truthfully, I have just gone back to back 13-hour shifts. I am literally gassed. So I'm going to call it a night here. You guys have been freaking tremendous Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You guys have been so awesome. I will definitely have more videos and content for you guys tomorrow and Monday coming up. A whole lot to talk about. Maybe the Saints will make some signings now. They like to make signings after the draft because no comp pick formula and all that. So we'll be on the lookout for that. We'll see what the Saints do. Regardless of what they do, we'll have you covered here at Boo Crew Media. So make sure you guys subscribe. I want to thank you guys one more time for all your comments. You guys have been tremendous. I love you all deeply. Really appreciate the support. And I'll talk to you guys soon here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.